There you go. That's good. That's better.
Well, I want to take this opportunity to welcome the mayor back to our offices and to our meeting. As you all know, we've been through several months of some difficult negotiations and at times strained conversations about what was the best thing to do, both for city employees and for the city and the people that we serve. And now at this point, almost all the unions have ratified the Central Table Agreement as well as their local union agreements. And the ratification rights votes, as you have seen, have been very high. And there is obviously strong support for the format that we created, the process that we use, the involvement of all the people in a cooperative fashion to reach this kind of an agreement that best serves the city and is fair. It's founded on the principle, as we've often discussed, of shared sacrifice, and that seems to have been met with a very positive response from city employees and the people that we serve. The new factor for consideration today is that we have now reached an agreement in MTA that applies the same set of principles that we negotiated citywide to that agency, and we're very pleased with that announcement and want to thank Deborah Johnston, her staff, and all the MTA leadership of the various unions about that MTA-wide agreement. We're now involved in individual union negotiations following the same sequencing that we used in the citywide negotiations, and we have either reached agreement or are very close to an agreement with each of the individual unions in MTA. So we believe that we have really made some tremendous progress, and I want to thank the mayor for his leadership and his flexibility in working with us, and his motivation from the start, as he's expressed to us, was about saving city services and saving city jobs, and all the way through this process he has completely fulfilled that commitment. So we wanted to offer our thanks in that regard as well.
Thanks, Bob. And first of all, it's good to see you on this side of the room now, Bob. Media doesn't understand that. Don't worry about it. But and Tim, thank you for your leadership and stewardship, and Larry, and thank you for your leadership, Bob, in particular, for all your hard work and working collaboratively with everybody around this table and those that couldn't make it today. Look, I've said this privately, I say this publicly all the time, to the extent it's written about or talked about or shown on a television station or on a radio station. I can't control that, but I'll say it again. I don't know, honestly, another city in the United States of America with more enlightened labor leadership than the city and county of San Francisco. And I say that not to patronize. I mean that sincerely. You know, I've been mayor now almost 7 years, and we've been through difficult times in the last 7 years in terms of structural budgetary problems. And each and every time, without exception, labor steps up to the plate. They step up to the plate to do exactly what Bob said, to save city services to the most vulnerable San Franciscans, and to do their best to save jobs for their colleagues. And I think that's a big deal. And this year you demonstrated it at a level that I'm not sure many of us thought was possible. And I see Mickey here and negotiating team. I don't know that any of us really thought was possible. And it needed to be done. And what you did was extraordinary, because a budget I'll submit next Tuesday will represent it. And I think the story of the budget should be the story of the budget, will be what you guys did to preserve direct services to those that need government the most at a time when government matters the most, and the impact you had on mitigating what would have been probably the most significant job losses for city employees in our city's history. And I'm very proud of that as a San Franciscan, as a mayor, and as someone that worked with all of you over the course of the last 6 months. And so there's a lot to be thankful for, and there's a lot to be appreciative of. And it wasn't easy. And a lot of folks are still a little unhappy about it. I get that. And you all are here as leaders, and you had to deliver this message to your membership, the folks that entrusted you at this table. And I want to just acknowledge that I understand how difficult that is. And I have enormous admiration and respect for the task that you had at hand. but you delivered. And as Bob said, you delivered at some rather historic numbers. When SEIU came back, and I got a call from Roxanne saying 92% of our membership ratified, that's extraordinary under these circumstances. And others of you can lay the same claim. And so, again, this is really an opportunity to say thanks, but on behalf of those that will benefit the most, and those are folks certainly are not at this table. Those are folks out on the streets, and those are folks that won't be out on the streets and sidewalks. I can just say this, you deserve an enormous amount of credit and praise from the people of this city. So thank you. I will close by saying two other things. One is I want to thank my Chief of Staff, Steve Cava. No one works harder, cares more. We all have to hear his speech. You are not the only one that listens to his speeches. We deal with them, trust me. But they're sincere, and Steve's patience is second to none. And so, Steve, thank you for all your extraordinary work and for your dedication to getting us here as well. And Mickey, again, and the whole team. I don't know why you guys choose the profession you're in, but you got to do something. But thank you for your wisdom, your insight, and your willingness to be creative with Bob and everyone around this table. One size does not fit all as it comes to labor agreements. Everyone has their own unique needs and expectations, and to match them, to open up contracts that are closed, to get people to agree and ratify is an extraordinary thing. And so that is really the purpose of inviting, I think, the public in by inviting the press in to really communicate the enormous task that was addressed and tackled. With that, I want to turn it over to Nat Ford, because I do think the other, Bob just said, significant announcement today is a framework. We made an announcement yesterday or day before around a framework for police and fire, and now we have a framework for our transit operators that will allow us, and he'll talk in detail, a 2-year agreement that, if supported by the rank and file, will allow us by July of 2011 to eliminate the service cuts that have been advanced by the MTA, beginning by eliminating in just a few months in September 55% of the service cuts, and beginning the implementation of wiping out the remaining service cuts again by the middle of the next calendar year. This assumes not only that the 2-year agreement is ratified, it also assumes that the request made by the MTA board and its director to the Board of Supervisors is also supported, and that they make a contribution by providing upfront money that was otherwise due to this system through their role as transit authority representatives, and provide those dollars immediately upon the ratification of the TWU tentative agreement. So I think this is a big announcement for the riders, and all of us in here hopefully are users of the system, not just operators within the system. I want to thank TWU for stepping up to the plate. It's not been easy, and I know I've been tough, and perhaps a little more tough publicly than I have on many other unions, but I felt we needed to do what we needed to do to get to where we are. And I just want to thank Nat and his team and Deborah for their stewardship. They've been quietly working behind the scenes this entire time, and they deserve a lot of credit. This has not been easy. You want tough budget problem, it's MTA with all these state cuts. $220 million in the last 4 years has been taken from this transit system. They'd be running huge surpluses had it not been for the state and their raids, and they've been trying their best to deal with that, and I think this agreement will help us in a significant way.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I, too, want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to everyone in this room who worked on these agreements to get us to this day. We were optimistic, I think, in terms of developing our 2011 and 2012 budgets. The MTA has a 2-year budget. We were very optimistic, and we felt that, at least in terms of this framework with the PEC, that there was going to be a certain amount of savings that would help us in terms of our operation. We are very pleased that we were able to get over the line as it relates to our operators. We do have a tentative agreement that we believe gives us the opportunity to restore at least 55% of the service that we have eliminated as of May 8th, and then be able to ramp up over the next year to a full restoration by July 1st. That's monumental. There's not a transit system, a large transit system around this country that isn't talking about their second and third service cuts. And for us to be in a position that for a little bit more than a year to do a service cut and then be able to restore that service is a testament to the leadership that you've brought to the table. It's a testament to our commitment to the citizens of this city. And 700,000 riders use this system on a daily basis, and we need to make sure that they continue to have a viable transit system. So anticipating, also being optimistic, anticipating that the leadership in TWU, we would be able to work out some agreement, we had already planned for a restoration of service to be scheduled for September 4th. And with the hopeful ratification by the membership of TWU, it's our plan to restore the night owl service that we have adjusted to run about every 45 minutes. We will go back to the previous schedule, which is every 30 minutes, so that's a full restoration on our night owl service. As it relates to our community routes, a lot of our community routes, we eliminated or reduced the service hours on those community routes, so there's a great number of riders who are out there that their service, which was running to 12 midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, has now been carved back to about 10:30 or 11 o'clock, depending on the route. We'll be able to restore all of that evening service back to its original schedule, and then we will look at some of our express routes and where we could add additional capacity to those express routes. So I'm not going to walk you through all the detail on those express routes, but again, I think it's fantastic that Deborah Johnson and her folks, working with all of you in this room, locked behind closed doors for months now, and late into last night, from what I understand, we're able to work out and hammer out an agreement that is in the best interests of our riders and best interests of the citizens of San Francisco. So we will provide the details to the press later today in terms of our restoration plan, which will start on, again, September 4th, and then we will ramp up to a full restoration of 10% add back in service for the Muni system by July of next year. Thank you.
So well done. And then there's the budget Tuesday. That's another discussion for another day. Are there any questions from the press so we can...
I just need a little clarification from Mr. Ford. The restoration of service that you expect to get this ratified to be complete by next July, it's the service cuts as of May 8th?
Yes.
Not the ones from back in December?
December 5th was not actually a service cut for the Muni system. It was a rearrangement of some of our routes. We added some routes, eliminated some others, so it was really a restructuring of our system. And in actuality, we actually added service hours on December 5th at a lower cost because we redesigned our schedules, our routes, and work programs.
And did you just say this restoration was in the works already anyway?
No, we planned in the event that we were able to work out these agreements, we planned that there would be some restoration. How far it would be reaching, we weren't sure, but we were able to clearly know what was our priorities in terms of restoring service.
We figured we were going to find a way to get there over the next year, but this will allow us to fast track that restoration.
Mr. Mayor, has there been a vote scheduled now for the rank and file?
This
That's
is
the first question. Second question, are you going to personally do anything to try to get them to sign on to this agreement in terms of going out to the yard?
I have every confidence. Look, one should not have to do that. Every single agreement that was ratified around this table was done without the mayor going and personally talking to every rank and file representative. I don't expect that's necessary. We'll do whatever it takes to get this ratified. But when we're able to get police, fire, SCIU, all the other public employees unions around this table to ratify without that need, I expect with TWU they can deliver this. This is a very different climate than one a number of months ago. They have a lot at stake of following through on this TA. I don't expect to see what we saw with the last tentative agreement.
This agreement is predicated on the union agreeing to give up the $9 or so million that they were scheduled to receive this year, and the $9 or more million they were scheduled to receive next year under the
there's an agreements in that 18.5 to $19.5 million range over 2 years. So it's roughly the equivalent of that wage increase. So that's correct. But we're not, without getting into the details, and we don't want to sell this so that we can sell it. We don't want to sell it now so we can sell it over the next few days when this gets ratified. We came up with an interesting framework that's not as clean as just saying, here's the wage, we're going to give it back. There was other ways of reaching the dollar figure, and we, without getting into the details, were able to accommodate.
Without getting into the details, other agreements made in that sense, or
just
compromise?
Purely as it relates to Bob's a labor guy who uses labor language so efficiently and effectively that I'm going to allow him
Thank you, sir.
to nuance this.
Yeah, there are other unions in MTA besides 250A, the transit operators. A lot of the savings that MTA is going to enjoy as a result of this agreement are coming from those other unions. I want to give credit to TWU Local 200 to service critical, and even to our Union 21 and to SEIU Miscellaneous. There are a lot of employees in MTA, and they've all agreed to this MTA a central table agreement that will generate a lot of the savings. The drivers, the transit operators are a separate group within this universe. They are just beginning to discuss a special agreement for them, and we're, in respect for that process, not really discussing any of the details.
Bottom line is, it's not just the operators that we're celebrating. We're celebrating all the other bargaining units within the MTA that stepped up to the plate as well. And it's because of that combined effort, the operators and these other bargaining units, these other represented classes, that the cumulative savings will all be used to offset the service cuts. That it wouldn't be enough just to have the operators give back their wage increase. We needed that support and that contribution from these other classes.
Do you have any indication from the board about the $7 million that they have on?
Yeah, well, they approved it conditionally. So not only has that condition been met, I think it's been substantially exceeded. Was it Michelangelo said, the biggest risk is not that we aim too high and miss it, it's we aim too low and reach it. I'm not interested in just doing half of the service cuts in terms of restoration. That was their condition. We actually believe we can do more, and by July of next year, we will have achieved that. So we more than exceeded their condition. And I want to thank them in advance of sending, again, the money that already was going to the MTA, but just providing that upfront payment to address this historic shortfall. I say that not tongue-in-cheek, not to be patronizing, but to be sincere. They have expressed privately and publicly their desire to make that contribution, but they wanted to see something for it, and they've seen more than enough, I think, for it.
TWU, the details of the agreement, we can't get into that. Obviously, they need to have their time and their process in terms of bringing that information to their membership, and we're hopeful that their membership will ratify that. What we basically are looking at is annual next year, $9.7 million for next year, coupled with the $7 million that the mayor expressed from the Transportation Authority. It's a $16.7 million opportunity. Our service cut, the 10% service cut represented $28.8 million. So as you can see, it's more than half of the savings that we would have received from the 10% service cut. So we're able to restore better than half of the service cuts that we implemented on May 8th. It's a 2-year agreement, so the following year it identifies $9 million in savings for the second year.
But is that maybe the size of
Well, right now we're sort of dealing with the facts as we have them in front of us at this time, and based on the facts we have in front of us at this time, we feel confident that we can restore over 50% of the service on May 4th and ramp up during the course of a year to close this 10% service cut by July 1st. We have previously stated that we planned on restoring 5% of the service on July 1st of 2011. So coupled with this additional savings, we are very confident that we'll be able to reach 100% service levels.
And the May revise, just to clarify, you recall there was some good news. There was an Assembly bill and a Senate bill that allowed us to capture $36 million that otherwise was going to be taken from this agency. So the May revise primarily deals with other related departments, not the MTA. So we feel confident that the worst has been exposed as it relates to potential transit cuts at the MTA from the state, at least for this fiscal year.
Right.
What's the time frame, did you already say, for a ratification vote?
We're not aware of when that's going to be scheduled.
It depends on the different organizations, but I'd say all of it should be completed within the next 2 weeks.
What was you talking again about the community service? You said at night it was going to restore. Could you explain that for me?
Right. We have, in front of me, we have community routes that we truncated that service or ended that service earlier in the evening. On average, generally those services run around, terminate around 12 midnight to 1 a.m. And as part of our service cut, we reduced that service by cutting those routes or terminating the service around 10:30 to 11 o'clock in some cases. So what we're proposing is to restore all of those community routes back to their normal service levels. And the routes I'm discussing, just so you have them, the 17 Park Merced, the 35 Eureka, the 36 Teresita, the 37 Corbett, the 52 Excelsior, the 56 Rutland, the 66 Quintera, and the 67 Bernal Heights. So those are all of those community-type routes that were impacted in the 10% service cut.
This December?
That will be by September 4th. September 4th.
Can you talk a little bit about overall cost savings for labor with all these unions stepping up as what the capital plan?
We're certainly north of $250 million when you go all in. I think over 2 years, easily over $250 million, which is a pretty extraordinary number when you consider. So you add up the agreement we're talking about here and police and fire plus the roughly $200 million that was negotiated around this table, it's well north of $250 million.
The question was about savings? I couldn't hear.
Yeah, $250 million, over $250 million.
In 2 years? Or
Over a 2-year period for all through all these negotiations. Yeah, when you add it all up, and that's not all general fund savings, enterprise departments like the MTA, PUC, all the rest, but that's all in.
Yeah, for the viewers wondering, are the muni operators going to get their raises? You're saying it's a complicated issue. You can't.
They basically are giving back the equivalent of their wage increase. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're taking a check and then returning it. There are other ways of reaching that financial goal, and they are providing roughly the equivalent of that wage increase.
Can you give an example?
That would be then answering the question that I refused to answer, and I'm trying to avoid.
That's cute.
It's all you've done. I mean, there won't be anything earth-shattering. Put it this way: I mean, you can over-hypothecate what that may include. A lot of it will make a lot of sense when you learn more about it. I mean, I don't think the writers particularly care how we get there. They just care that we get there and we don't do something that has unintended consequences. What we did, I think, was prudent. It was judicious. It's in the writers' best interest. Helps us move forward with reforms in the system. Actually, I'm very, very pleased with the package.
The recent audit that came out to help factor into.
No, I mean, with respect, there was nothing in that audit that we weren't long familiar with. It doesn't mean the audit was a waste of time and energy. It basically codified a lot of what we already knew. And it doesn't mean that things in the audit weren't things that we had originally negotiated in the $14 million wage concessions. We had. So a lot of it has been on the table for some time.
All right,
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Bob. I think I'm done with you. My days are numbered, even if I lose this race. We're 2 years. I got 2 years. Oh, that's it. Yeah, right.